Welcome to Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave, where we are on a journey to answer 4 leadership questions from some of the best leaders and leadership minds in America. So today we are pleased to have special guest, Jean Humbrecht. So Jean, introduce yourself, a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do.
Thank you, Dave, for having me on your podcast here. I really appreciate it. So my name is Jean Humbrecht. I'm the principal attorney at Humbrecht Law. I practice exclusively criminal and traffic defense. My main office is in Manassas, but I practice throughout Northern Virginia. So essentially, I like to describe it as I travel an hour from Manassas. So I'll go to Frederick County, Front Royal, Stafford, Fauquier, Arlington, Fairfax, Laude, and whatever's an hour from Manassas. I just celebrated my 10-year law firm anniversary. So the way I like to say it is, all right, I made it 10 years and haven't gone bankrupt yet. So,
and that's an accomplishment with a lot of small businesses.
It really is. It really is. So I went to Ave Maria Law School, which was in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and moved to Naples, Florida. And then I got a job on Capitol Hill. Luckily, they hired me before I got my bar results back. I worked for the House Oversight Committee. And after working there 2 years, I went to the George Washington University Law School to get my L.L.M, which is a master's in law in litigation. So for 2 years, I worked full time. I went to school part time. That was a crazy 2 years. And in 2014 is when I graduated from that program. I left Capitol Hill. I went to work with a small firm in Fairfax, which is where I grew up. And that wasn't a good fit. Let's just say that. And after a few months, I decided to do something I never envisioned. I decided to hang my own shingle. And I did that in August of 2014. And that was 10 years ago. And I'm still kicking.
Nice. Two things. One, that is one heck of a change from Ann Arbor, Michigan to Naples, Florida. My God, you're talking about from freezing to death to, oh my God, I'm going to roast. One extreme to the other. I don't think you could get much more extreme unless you went from Alaska to Hawaii nearby. And
yeah, it was. I liked it.
I love Naples. The Southwest Florida is beautiful, but man, from Michigan to Southwest Florida is quite a difference. And for those who aren't in the legal profession or aren't as familiar with it, explain a little bit about, obviously, when you go to law school, you get a Juris Doctor, you get a J.D., but what's like the L.L.M and some of the steps beyond that? Because I think a lot of folks aren't necessarily as familiar with that as it could be.
Mm-hmm. Well, essentially, with a few very minor exceptions, you need to have attended an ABA, American Bar Association accredited law school in order to sit for the bar and basically become barred in the state. So law school is a requirement. Yes. And that's 3 years. General law school is 3 years. Some programs have 4 years where you can get another, certification or another degree with it, like an MBA type of a thing. But that's not common. It's usually the 3 years. And that's the JD. That's what you need to take the bar. Then normally you take the bar the summer after you graduate. Some people wait until the winter to take the bar. And that's it. That's all you need. And then as long as you pay your state bar the money and stay out of trouble, you're good. So the L.L.M is not a requirement. That's what's called a postgraduate degree. So it's a degree after your law degree. You don't need it. I just chose to do it. And actually, I'm kind of glad you asked, because the reason why I never planned on doing that, I was looking into a Ph.D. program, actually. And at the time I worked on Capitol Hill, I lived in Alexandria. So, there are a ton of schools around this area. So I was looking at all the different schools programs, and I did not know that you had to you had to select a program and you had to do certain classes. It wasn't just your thesis and your big research project. And there was no program that I liked. I didn't like any of them. And then I came across the program at GW, and it's an L.L.M in litigation, which is kind of a new concept. Usually the master's in law traditionally has been in tax or international law. And obviously I have interest in those tax. No, I'll pay somebody to make taxes. No. But litigation, for anyone that doesn't know, it's trial work. And that's what I do on a daily basis. And it's what I always wanted to do. So the entire program, 2 years, the classes were just focused on different aspects of a trial, and you were graded on your participation in class. There was very little writing. I mean, it was, you had reading and things to do like that, but there was a class on evidence. There was a class on the American jury. There was a class on international dispute resolution, arbitration. There was a civil class, which was required, even though I had no interest in civil law, a trial start to finish over a weekend. That was a crazy weekend. There was a criminal trial straight start to finish. I don't remember the rest of them, but it was just all things that are directly relevant to what I wanted to do and what I am doing. So that was my L.L.M experience. So I hope that answered your question.
I think so. I think it's always, you always hear like a bachelor's, master's, doctorate kind of thing, and the legal profession is one of the few that you hear that, okay, well, the entry level, I got to get my Juris Doctorate, and then I go postdoc and get a master's. It's like, and just the language of it is on it. But it sounds like, of all the programs you could have taken, one that's very practitioner based, exactly what you wanted to do. Like I said, the litigation was much better than just an academic exercise and, well, let me learn about this side or the other, versus actually something you can apply to exactly what you wanted to do. So that's very cool. So let's jump into the first question. So what does leadership mean to you, and what does good leadership look like?
So I had to think about this one for a few minutes. And the first thing that I thought sounds a little boring and generic, but I have an explanation here. Leadership, okay, I think, is inspiring people, and you have to get people to trust you. Now, obviously, anybody can say that, but how do you get that? Communication. Communication, I think, is the most important thing. And it's not just about leading in big groups, it's leading in small groups, and not necessarily even in your job, but in your personal life. And I think that if you can not even necessarily master, but try to master, communication skills to understand other people, you will be able to better lead them, to communicate with them so that they will follow you. And then if you can inspire people, they'll look to you as an example. So if you cannot communicate with people and you're a boss, for example, they might come in and, do their 9-to-5 job or whatever it is, but they're not going to go the extra mile. Additionally, I was thinking, if they don't understand why you're asking them to do something, it might seem obvious to me if I, ask one of my employees to do something, but if they don't understand, they might question it and think it's not important. And that's not necessarily a problem on their end. It's understanding, from the leader's perspective, understanding everybody that you are dealing with so that you can correctly communicate with them to get, the best result possible, whether it's directly in work or even in a personal relationship, with a spouse or a friend or something like that, because you might not know, for example, that you said something offensive and you had no idea, you did not mean for it to be offensive. But if you can understand, for example, if that person that was offended is able to communicate you in, not an aggressive way,
Right.
Then you can understand where they're coming from, and then, deal with it, because things like that are going to happen. So that all boils down to the communication thing. And that's how I was thinking about this. If you can not only know how to communicate yourself, so that other people can understand what it is that you're trying to do, you also need to understand where they are all coming from and how they can interpret certain things.
No, it makes perfect sense. And you're right. It's a funny concept that employees aren't mind readers, that, that you would think that, okay, well, they're just going to understand what I'm trying to tell them. Well, assume they don't,
Right.
But you're right. It's hard to trust somebody if you can't adequately communicate with them. And I think you're right. That really, I like Maxwell's kind of definition of leadership being influence. Well, it's hard to influence somebody if you can't effectively communicate with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's true.
So I think, no, you're absolutely right on that one. But it's funny, I was interviewing somebody the other day, and we led from communication into emotional intelligence, and how, it's how you communicate too with folks. And I said how you take it and how they understand it too.
Yeah.
So what is Good leadership.
Well, I think that directly correlates with the answer to the last question. And I mean, it might seem obvious, but listening to the people that you are leading, again, whether this is in a big organization or a small group, whether it's work related or personal related, listening to the people you're leading, knowing what they need and knowing how to communicate with them so you can get the best possible outcome. So it's not about standing out as somebody that's more experienced or bigger or better than anybody, because nobody cares about that. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about what your credentials are. Frankly, I mean it's great. I got all these degrees, but who cares? Nobody cares. They need to like you and they need to respect you, and they don't even necessarily have to like you, but they need to respect you. So you need to be able to, communicate with them, communicate the mission of whatever you're doing. Again, whether it's work related, personal related, it doesn't matter what the situation is. And if you can communicate with them and they can understand you and you can understand them, we're going to get the best possible outcome for whatever it is that you're trying to do. So I think that is what good leadership is. It's not, obviously everybody wants, you want certain results, whatever it is that you're trying to do, but if you get the results but you have people that aren't happy with you for whatever reason, you're not going to be able to retain them and might not be able to get those results again because you're going to have constant turnover, so
Yeah.
that's
And that really leads down a bad road because, obviously there's a couple of things there that I want to hit on before we close out the segment, but I think a lot of leaders may not understand some of the costs that come with that.
Mhm.
Because, like you said, you have somebody that you're effective as a leader just enough to stand between them and the paycheck, right? You're just on kind of that first level of leadership where I hold the position, but not much else beyond that. Well, like I said, if they get the job done, they're not happy, they go somewhere else. Well, if they not happy and stay, you run into the Gallup employee engagement data where they're talking about actively disengaged employee who's just not a happy camper costs like 34% of their salary annually and lost productivity, which, I mean, wages are high enough anyway. You don't want to be basically burning over a third of that in lost productivity. But then when you turn around and you have to replace this person, the cost of turnover is horrible. And most jobs nowadays don't have 50 people lined up waiting for it. I remember hearing that when I was much younger. Well, go ahead and leave. I've got 10 people will take your job tomorrow.
Right.
Well, maybe so, but maybe not today. I don't think it's in that sense. But so that's a big cost. And people just think of, oh wow, I'll just get somebody else. But or hey, they'll just figure it out. They don't have to be happy. They're getting a paycheck. Well, a lot of that paycheck is not going to them being productive when they're not happy campers. So, gotcha. So I think we will in this segment of Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave, we will get back to our next couple of questions in just a moment. Welcome back to Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave. We are here with Gene Humbrecht, and we're going to do something a little different. In our intro, we talked a lot about work, and I kind of a little bit of a deep dive into, hey, explain some of the different nuances of the degrees for those who aren't in the legal profession. And we wanted to get in a little bit about, yes, we got the work part of it, but how about on the kind of personal end? So we'll do intro part 2, and then we'll jump into our second question.
Well, thanks, Dave. Some people might be a little surprised to hear some of these things, but I am huge into working out and HIIT training. I have to go if at least 6 days a week. If I don't, like it bothers me so much. So I do burn boot camp, which is really intense, but I love it. And it's a good stress reliever. So that works because I'm so busy with all of the things that I do. If I didn't have my working out, I don't know what I would do. I'm also certified to teach body pump, which is a Les Mills class for anyone who's heard of that. It's a high repetition, low weight class that works every muscle group of the body. Now, I'm certified, but I haven't taught since before COVID, so take that for whatever it's worth. Things just obviously we can imagine how that happened.
Pandemic threw a monkey wrench in a lot of people's programs.
Yeah. I also am a huge professional wrestling fan, WWE. I've been watching it with my brother since I was maybe 12 years old, and I actually was able to meet my two favorite wrestlers, one in person and one via Zoom during COVID. And I won't tell you how much I paid for that Zoom opportunity, but it was the best 2 minutes of my life.
Oh, that's
Um,
funny. And
I
who would
also,
those happen to be? Just out of curiosity.
oh, okay. So for anybody that, I'm sure somebody watching this watches wrestling, but Edge, Adam
Okay.
Copeland, he's the one that I met years ago at Dulles Town Center. And then Seth Rollins is the one that I met via Zoom. I also like
Gotcha.
Triple H and The Undertaker, but I have yet to meet them. Um, and just to be a little more diverse, I love trivia and Jeopardy. I do pub trivia when I can. And I also love going out to see live music. And I just bought my first house early 2023. And luckily, I live walking distance to Old Town Manassas. And, they have music all the time, even in the winter. So I love that, just to be able to just, even if it's not a genre that I like, I just like being out and listening to music.
Nice. That's nice. Very cool. Very cool. Yes, there's something a lot better about just live music experience than just all right. I put on the playlist and just go. So
Exactly.
whole different atmosphere, whole different environment. So let's get into the next question. So what was one of the biggest leadership challenges you've had to face?
Again, my answer to this is probably a little bit different. I actually didn't specify earlier, but I am the principal attorney at Humbrecht Law, but I am the only attorney. It is just me. So it is a small business. It is the epitome of small business. I've had a few part-time employees over the years. That has been very difficult, and I'll get into that in a minute. But the main point I want to make about the leadership challenges I've had to face, having to be having to run everything. You would think that you're just a solo practitioner, you're not a leader. Well, I have had to and still have to do everything. I'm the CPA, I'm the bookkeeper, I'm the networker, I'm the marketer, I'm the website content developer. What else? All the things. I pay the bills. If there's a problem, I have to, with anything, I have to fix it. And oh yeah, I'm also an attorney. Uh, I got to know how to run a business. And so with doing that, because I was thinking about this question: what is the biggest leadership challenge? And we've all had a lot in various aspects, small things, big things. But I think that's it, because it's been 10 years, and I'm still growing and still learning the best ways to do things. But over those 10 years, um, there's a lot of things you have to do, and there's a lot of people that you need to communicate with, and that's kind of the theme, and why I keep coming back to that. Clerks at the different offices in the courthouse, not, and it might seem obvious to not be a jerk to them, but you got to know the right questions to ask people. You got to know the right way to communicate with, and everybody's different. And I've even noticed that the way that you communicate with this person, and at this office, is going to be different from the way you communicate with this person at this office. So constantly being able to get things accomplished in the most efficient way possible, and knowing how to deal with problems, because they're going to arise all the time, and you can't predict all the problems that are going to arise. um, I feel like this was more eloquent in my head, but
Well, I mean, it makes sense because if you think about it, I mean, if you're, like I said, you're chief cook and bottle washer and you're trying to run a business by yourself, one, bringing on employees and training and onboarding is really difficult. But you mentioned a couple of things that really do make a lot of sense. And a lot of folks don't really appreciate the nuance of communicating with others. Like they just go around, and I joke all the time that the golden rule is great for everything except communicating with people, right? If I'm the 3 bullet point kind of person, right? I just give me the facts, give me the executive summary, and let's get out of here. I go around vomiting 3 bullet points on everybody because that's how I want to be communicated with. I'm going to probably tick off about 3/4 of the people, right? Because not everybody communicates that same way,
right.
you know?
And
Where,
then another thing with the employees, the part-time employees that I've had, I spent a lot of time. Well, first of all, it was impossible to find even the first person that I hired, and going through that interview process was very interesting. Oh yeah, another thing that you do, HR. If you have employees, then you got to know how to screen people, and then you got to take the time to do that. But anyway, so bringing on the employees, and I knew that I had to have, because I'm in court almost every day of the week, so I can't be there, 9 to 4, whatever hours they're in the office, telling them everything to do. So I knew that I needed to have a manual, and I needed to make it very clear. And I even ran that by other people, because what's clear to me might not be clear to you, because I know in my head the way I want things done, and everybody does things differently. I don't think you're going to find, two lawyers or two of any profession that do all of their books and run their business the exact same way. They have their own procedures and things that they like, and so I tried to get the manual. I thought it was very, very clear. I ran it by several people. No, they're great. Or, maybe you should add this. Okay, I did. Gave them the manual, gave them a copy, went through the manual with them. They didn't follow the manual at all. And I'm like, how can I be more clear? Like, I just, so that drove me nuts. But I bring this up because that's part of the leadership. You can't be there, and nobody wants someone breathing down their neck 24 hours a day either. So how do you communicate to them what you need done and why? And then, so this goes back to communicating with them. Even though I thought that I did a good job communicating in this manual, if something was done wrong, and I went back to the office and I explained why it had to be done, the way
Right.
that I said, they're like, "Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. I didn't know." Okay, so and there's no way to anticipate explaining all of those things. It's just not possible. But you just got to do your best to if they do something wrong, or if somebody has a question about it, be able to explain why, and they have to be able to come to you and ask why, or you need to know that it needs to be explained to them, in the appropriate way, not aggressively, and then they'll do it right the next time. And so that's something that I learned as I went, because obviously I try to prepare for everything, but there's just no way you can.
Yeah. And you mentioned that before. I mean, if people know the why behind this is why we do what we do, great. But it's hard to bake the why into the cake of the manual. So
Right.
a friend of mine that is a big checklist person, and like I said, he's follow the checklist. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And sometimes there's certain procedures that are easier to do that, and sometimes
Hmm.
it's not quite as easy to checklist out everything.
Right.
So, the next one is, what do you think, or what do you see as one of the biggest mistakes leaders make today?
I think that one of the biggest mistakes leaders make today is they don't pay attention to what their people need. They think they know what they need. And I thought about this in a variety of different ways. We're in the midst of a well, in Virginia, we're always in election cycles, but we're in the
That's very
midst of
true. I was going to say somebody's getting elected every November in
yeah.
Virginia. It's
But so when we're recording this, we're in the midst of the presidential election, and it just made me think. Politics. I actually was thinking about this. There, whatever side you're on, the elected official or the person trying to get into office. I don't think that they might tell you what they think you want to hear, but they're not telling you what you actually want to hear, right? And so that's obviously at a very high level, but then even lower levels, like for example, I do a lot of networking, and there's this one particular group I am in. We have a board, and how do I put this nicely? Um, I think it is a small networking group, and some of the people take it too seriously. This is a group that you pay to be a member of, and it's very rigid. You have to come to all these things, and the board members have to do all of these things, and not only are the people on the board volunteering their time to do this, we're also paying to be in the organization.
yes.
And why I'm saying that is there was never any sort of consensus about what the board, what leadership in this organization needs to do so that the members can get the most out of it, have a good time, meet people, make connections, and grow their businesses. And it's become so rigid. You have to sign up for this event in advance. And I said, well, some people, it's a happy hour, some people might not know if they can go until like 4:30 that day. Like, if you tell them they have to sign up and they can't commit 3 days in advance, then you're not going to have people come to this event. I know this, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but my point is about paying attention to what the people on your team need. Doing things because you think we need to be structured and we need to do this and we need to have everybody sign up for that because we need to know how many people we don't. It's a small group. Nobody cares about that stuff. They just want to come and have a good time and meet people and grow their business. Like, does that example make any sense?
Example are you talking about a networking group or a homeowners association? It sounds more like an HOA board than it does a networking group myself, but that's just me.
I refused to join my condo association. They were like, "Oh, you should join." Nope. "Oh, you'd be good." Nope. "We need a lawyer." Nope. I'm not doing it.
No, that's every free legal advice that they need. They're going to go, "Hey, you're on the board. You can do it." No,
It's not
no,
what I practice. "Oh, well, it's easy. It's just this, and that. I don't do zoning." "Oh, but you're a lawyer." No, doesn't work that way. Like,
no. Yeah, you're a physician, yeah, but I'm an orthopedist. I'm not a pediatrician. Like,
yeah.
Why are you bringing me your kid, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Exactly.
We should have talked about. Yeah, I can tell you anything you want about criminal and traffic defense. You ask me about bankruptcy, divorces, zoning. No. Mm-mm.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's just everybody has their specialty, and they don't realize, oh, you're a physician, you're a lawyer, you're whatever. Yeah, but that's not my specialty. And trust me, it's not the wisest thing to go too far outside of your lane in either profession.
Exactly. You don't want to be a jack of all trades and a master of none.
Yeah, like I said, but even the ones that are like your general practitioner, family practice. I mean, I have to know a little bit about a whole lot of stuff in this particular setting, or just like an emergency physician, right? Yeah, I know a little bit about a lot of stuff.
Yes.
And then I know, hey, this is above my pay grade in the ER. They got to get to the OR, right? I get them in, I do my thing, and I get them where they need to be. So even if you want to call general practitioners are still really, even a general practitioner lawyer will be like, okay, yeah, I handle a lot of stuff, and I know that right there you need to talk to a tax attorney about, or that right there you might want to talk to an immigration attorney about. I'm not going to dive into that pool.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to know. I thought about this. I don't know what made me think when I was driving the other day. You got to know what you don't know.
Yeah, and that's the toughest part. I mean, that's when you're unconsciously unconscious. I don't know what I don't know. It's the best thing you could be is like, hey, I realize I don't know that, and it's funny. People don't think that. It's like, well, why is that a good thing? Well, it's actually pretty powerful. That all right, I realize I don't know about that, and so I'm not going to meander over there. I know what I know, and I'm good at it, and I'm just stay safe in my lane. That's instead of venturing out. But yeah, I had before we end the segment, I can kind of relate. I've seen several organizations. Years ago, I was in a BNI group, and same thing. They were I had a commercial landscape business, and it was same thing, very regimented. But everybody that was there had the referrals were great. So I mean, if you could kind of go with the regimented part, and when everybody's getting great referrals and everybody's doing well and picking up a lot of business. But if you're not picking up a lot of the referrals that typically would think you would, in that it does make it kind of tough. And same thing, even then, it was like, hey, I'm getting great referrals and I'm picking up lots of business from all the realtors and the mortgage people and the even the tile guy. But I mean, at some point, it's like, okay, if I wasn't picking up all this business, this would be arduous to try to keep up with the requirements or whatever. But obviously that particular one, it made it worth my while. I've been in other ones where because of you're there networking to do, it's the ROI just isn't there, and you're like, okay, this is more of a pain, right? I can go to happy hour somewhere else, and like I said, a small group, people, I don't care. I just want to come in and have fun and meet people. Versus if I'm not, 1 week prior to the event, if I don't have for my head count, it can get ridiculous.
Yeah. And I mean, how can any of us do that? You might have a client call at, 4:30 in the afternoon, you're on your way out the door, but you have to deal with whatever the issue is and any of our whatever your job is, and you can't make the happy hour, and it's just happy hour. Like if you can go, great. If you can't, you can't. And then to feel this pressure, because that's another so you do a lot of networking, I do a lot of networking, and when you have to sign up for these things in advance, that's just a lot of pressure. And business owners and even non-business owners, we're all so busy, so to have to commit to that stuff, and then if I can't go, and then I have to tell them, sorry, I'm not going to be able to make, it's just too much pressure. People should be able to just come, enjoy it, have a good time, meet people, and not feel the pressure, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'll say this, well, as we wrap up this segment, we'll get into our last one and our final question. But I know one particular chamber that they just account like there's going to be about a 20 to 30% of the people that show up that aren't going to register. And, if they can make it, they can make it. If they can't, they can't. And so they're like, okay, well, we got a head count of 100. So we're going to tell them, hey, just count on about 120, right? Because it's just that and I'll be honest with you, I was the world's worst for a long time with that particular chamber. I never registered for anything. I started for some of the bigger events that could actually sell out and you won't be able to go. Like, maybe I ought to register for this. But I was, the world's worst about not registering for any of the events. But with that, we will wrap up this segment of Conversations on Leadership with Dr. David. We'll come back for our final segment and our last question in just a bit. Welcome back to Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave. We're here for our final segment with Gene Humbrecht. And with that, I'm going to jump right into our final question. So, Gene, what do you think is the best way for leaders to improve their leadership skills?
I think the best way for leaders to improve their leadership skills is to join Toastmasters. You were not expecting that answer, were you?
No, but I like it. So, I agree with it, but keep going.
So for those who don't know, Toastmasters is an international organization that teaches you not only public speaking and communication skills, but leadership skills. And I am kind of weird because I like public speaking, and I probably should for my job because I get paid to do it. But I feel like I can always improve, and I just love Toastmasters. And the way that it works is they have meetings that can fit anybody's schedule. And now after the pandemic, a lot is hybrid, a lot is online. You can do Monday 7:30 a.m. You can do Friday 7:30 p.m. They have so many options. So whatever your schedule is, you can find something that will fit it. And in Toastmasters, it's just all about speaking opportunities in leadership. And there's different pathways, and there's different speeches in each path that you're required to complete. And then there are electives. Like, for example, the last elective speech that I did in my persuasive influence path was preparing for an interview. And that was before we scheduled this. So this had nothing to do with it. But there's so many things that
Masters.
there are so many things. There are so many speech options that anybody can find something that would be relevant for anything that they're going to have to do. And I really like it because it is a safe environment. People, they don't criticize you. What they do is and there's a way that after this, so you give a speech, there's usually 3 speeches per meeting, and then there's table topics, which is impromptu speech. There's somebody that's an evaluator of each speech, and someone who runs the meeting for the day. Speaking of leadership, they're called the Toastmaster of the day. They're responsible for making sure all the roles are filled. So I didn't even think about that before I started this, but there are so many roles in a meeting. So even if you don't want to give a speech, you can fill another role. You can evaluate somebody. You can be the timer. And the speeches have to be a certain amount of time. It sounds rigid, but it's really not, because if you go over, okay, nobody cares. Like, oh, you went over, it was supposed to be 7, it was 7:50. Nobody cares. It's a safe environment for people to practice the public speaking, and your evaluator doesn't, criticize you. They talk about the things that you did well, and this is what you're supposed to do in every evaluation. They talk about, these are the things that you might want to work on to make your speech better. So I've never felt that anybody was negative, and I've always had a good experience doing it. And for my particular job, it's just something that I thought would be good for me, and I enjoy it. I'm actually in a few different clubs now. Getting back to the leadership, people usually think Toastmasters speeches, but Toastmasters focuses on two main things: public speaking and leadership. And there's different paths. There's one path that is like specifically geared towards, government contractors and HR. And obviously that doesn't work for me, so I didn't pursue that one. There's a path that is all about engaging humor. If that's something that, is important to you, or you need to do for whatever reason, like, you can choose that path. There are paths that are, specific for specific types of industries, and then there are general paths. And in every, and they call it a path because there's, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's this speech and this, you got to do this speech in this level, and then you have these electives on the higher levels. And some of the required ones, which I don't really like, but it's good that they require them. There's a required conflict resolution. There's a project. There's a required understanding your leadership style project. There's a project specifically on mentoring. So certain projects you have to do, and then you have option. You can choose the other projects from a list of them, and that's a little bit why I was thinking about the conflict resolution and the communication, because I've had to do that speech and project before. And so my whole point of this, I think one thing that I need to work on is being concise. And I think I took way too long to answer this question, but I think Toastmasters is great for anyone. And if they're nervous about public speaking and don't like it, like weirdos like me do, it's a safe environment, and you learn a lot, and there's so many options, like, that can fit any schedule. And I really recommend that people, check it out, because it's a great organization. And they did not pay me to say all that stuff.
It's funny you say that, because I couldn't agree with you more. I remember years ago, I had a buddy of mine who was like, man, you got to check out this thing, the Toastmasters. It's great. And he was sending me all the Toastmaster magazines, and he was just busting my chops. Probably 5 or 6 years. He was just constantly on me about it. And I'm like, hey, at the time, teach part-time at the community college. I do training and development. I talk in front of people all the time. I don't see the big deal, blah, blah, blah. Kind of dismissive. My fault. I was an idiot. And then when I went back to school, we were in a big lecture hall, and I saw this one professor get up there, and it's South African. So kind of like that Commonwealth British accent type thing. And to say this guy was eloquent would be cursing him. He was amazing. He was talking in $20 words. I don't know what he was saying, but I was enthralled. Right. And at the very end of it, he wrapped it up, and he was like, and at the end of basically this 4-year Ph.D. program, you're going to be able to do the same thing. And I turned as white as this sheet of paper, and I was like, oh, crap. And I just scared to death. I mean, I was like, I can talk in front of people, but I cannot do what this cat just did. Mm-hmm. I can't. I just knew it. And I called my buddy up, and I'm stringing me a copus. Man, you're smart. I'm stupid. You the man. I'm a chump. I'm sorry. Tell me about this Toastmasters thing, right? And that was 2010. Oh, my God. Yeah, that was 2010. And even when I started, I was like, oh, I got this. And then let's just say I didn't say I got a mean evaluation. Let's just say I got the evaluation that I needed to get. And then I realized, hey, wait a minute, just shut them and do what they say and roll with the program. And it's been phenomenal, because like I said, no matter how good you are, everybody can hone the craft. But it is, everyone I've been to, like I said, it's a safe, warm environment. You do get to, people don't think about the leadership development part of it like they do the presentation part of it. And it's just as much one as the other. And especially like for what you do, the impromptu speaking, the table topics, to be able to, somebody drops a question and everybody's at the conference table like, don't call me. And they're like, gee, what do you think about that? You're like, oh, crap, they called me. And to learn different techniques on on how to be able to come up with something on the fly and be able to sound like you have two brain cells to rub together when you do this. It really is a learned skill, and it's amazing. The best part I've seen is folks that are scared to death to talk to folks, and then all of a sudden, in the course of 6 to 12 months, they don't even realize how much better they've gotten. And to see that growth and development over that time frame, it's just phenomenal. So yeah, I'm like you, I can't recommend it highly enough. As a matter of fact, I finally pushed through when they were doing the new pathways. I'm like, I got to finish my distinguished Toastmaster before this pathways kicks in, and I have to start from scratch again.
Oh no, do we have to start from scratch?
No. I was close enough, and trust me, I did whatever I had to do to make that happen, to get it done by that June 30th. So at least I did finish the distinguished Toastmaster, get my DTM before the pathways came in and the program changed. But yes,
when they switched to pathways a few years ago or whatever. I've only been doing it in 2020.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Before the pandemic and everything. So no, at least I was able to go through and finish. And like I said, you start off with tell me a little bit about yourself with an icebreaker, and at the end of the journey, the highest earned award they have is a distinguished Toastmaster. So yeah, that's
and for everybody that doesn't know, to become a distinguished Toastmaster, you have to complete two paths, which is a lot of speeches. You have to hold some sort of divisional leadership role, back to the leadership. And every club has a president, secretary, vice president of education. They have all these leadership roles. So you start at the club level, you go to area, and then advance up. So Dave had to have had some sort of club leadership role and a higher leadership role. And then there are more. I'm not a DTM yet, unfortunately, but then there's advanced projects that you need to do with certain parameters. So it's a lot, but it's attainable, and not only do you get the practice, like you're required to hold at least a couple leadership roles, and you can do whichever leadership roles you want, essentially. But so that's another example of how leadership comes in, because you have to do it to advance in Toastmasters. So not only do you practice the speaking, you have to be a leader.
And I'll be honest with you, there's a whole lot of difference between having a leadership role at an individual club level and having a leadership role where you're, a director over a whole bunch of different clubs, or like I said, or you're in a leadership role in a kind of a higher district level where you're in charge of a bunch of different areas that are in charge of a bunch of different clubs. So it really puts a different spin on it. And it's a great way to, if you have some, like yourself, you're a solo business owner, it's a great way to be able to practice leadership without necessarily, running a company of 200 people.
Right.
And there's nothing tougher. I'll be honest with you. It's a little bit easier when you can stand in between them and their paycheck, as far as, or from a compliance, I'll say more than leadership. But when you got to lead a group of volunteers that don't have to be there, right? If you can hone that, you can be pretty good at leading folks that are your employees that you have to pay, because sometimes that's like herding cats, and it can be a bit of a challenge, but you just have to really hone in your communication skills and your persuasion skills. It definitely well worth it. I'd recommend it to anybody like yourself. So yes, I've had somebody ask me the other day, they're like, you talk all the time, you present all the time, why do you still keep going to Toastmasters? Why do you need it? I'm like, you can always get better. Like you said, it's not a matter of I'm doing it to get to a level, and then once I get to that level, I just stop, and I'm going to be that good forever. As much as I like Dale Carnegie class or a public speaking class in college, it's one and done, and then that you don't continue to work on it a little bit at a time over a long period of time and get that incremental growth. That skill starts deteriorating because you're not in front of people giving presentations. Like I said, you can't get a safer environment to basically stumble, and everybody starts from the same place. So no, I couldn't agree more that that's a phenomenal place to hone your leadership and public speaking skills is Toastmasters. So I'm with you. I'd encourage anybody to find a local club and at least visit a couple of them, see which one's a good fit for you, and just check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So with that, tell our listeners how they can connect with you, connect with with your law firm, LinkedIn website, whatever. How can they grab all the Humbrecht Law goodness.
If you if you are on social media, you will find me. Facebook Facebook
Chop.
is facebook.com/Humbrecht Law. I post business updates there. I post, legal tidbits, legal news, and I also do local business spotlights, a little bit similar to what you're doing here, Dave. And Dr. Dave is actually going to be on my show in November. And then LinkedIn, Humbrecht Law, Twitter or X now, Humbrecht Law, Instagram, Manassas Criminal Lawyer, and what else? Website, humbrechtlaw.com. It's all my name. You'll eventually be able to spell that name if it sounds confusing. Like if you see it enough, you'll know. And then another thing that I can't believe with 2 introductions I forgot to talk about. I am my worst self promoter. I wrote a book. I wrote a book on and published it on the consequences of speeding ticket convictions in Virginia. So that's on Amazon, and that's called More Than a Fine. If there's a subtitle, but you type in More Than a Fine, you'll find it. So if you're interested in checking out the book, go there. I also do some signing happy hours throughout the area, and I'll give you a personalized copy, and I try to write something funny in each one. I don't know if it is funny, but I try.
Well, one last thing that I wanted to make sure, since you brought up the book, and we've
Mhm.
had this conversation before, tell folks about how you connect with businesses that have drivers
Mhm.
that work for them, and that they to help them understand, like you said, the consequences of them having some traffic faux pas, let's just say, in their personal life, and how that
Mhm.
really affects them in their business and how it affects the business owner.
Right.
That was fascinating.
Right. So I like to come into businesses that have fleets of drivers or really any drivers. So you name it, contractors, HVAC, electricians, plumbers, etc., cleaning services, to come into a staff meeting and just, be a resource about what can happen to your job, you, the person who works for this company, if you get in trouble, if you have a bad driving record, if you acquire a bad driving record while you are employed. And why is that going to happen? If something happens when you're in your personal vehicle, even off work time, and even more so if it's a work vehicle during work time, your employer's insurance for you driving is going to be affected. And if you have to drive for work and you make them uninsurable, you could lose your job, or their insurance could go up, or they might move you to a desk job for X amount of time until the insurance will clear you. So people don't really think about that. Some people might not tell their employers because they're afraid to, but if you get a conviction for X, Y, and Z, and there's no way to know. Obviously, the more serious the conviction, the more problem it's going to be. If you get a DUI conviction, yeah, that's going to be a problem. If you have like a high speed reckless, things like that. But even if you get a lower charge, like a speeding,
Right.
that could be enough to put you over the edge if you already don't have a great record, and then you get this one more conviction. So I just like to tell people that it's important, to first of all, like, try not to get a ticket, but everybody does. But if you get a ticket, don't, or even a criminal charge like DUI, driving unsuspended, something like that, don't just pay it. Like, you got to take it seriously. It's going to impact your employer's insurance. So, I just like to be a resource so people are aware of that, because they don't think about that. And, the business owner, I'm sure, knows that their employees need clean records, and I'm sure most of them check the records when they hire the person. But you might be fine when you get hired, but then if something happens while you're employed there, even if it's in your personal vehicle, it can impact your job. And a lot of people don't realize that. And also, just very, very briefly, if you, for whatever reason, you would have an issue getting a security clearance, and you have no interest in getting a job that requires a clearance, but you have to drive onto a facility, which there are a lot of in this area, that requires screening before you go in, and you have a problem, whether it's traffic related or criminal convictions, or a host of other things, even about they screen you, and just like they screen an employee. And if you can't go onto that facility, you can't do your job. And I have heard personally from people that I know that own businesses that they had to send someone else out there to do the job and things like that, because the person could not get onto the facility. So it's not just a matter of, not having, having a clean driving record, you have to be able to do all of these things, and people just don't think about it.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, it's first time I had heard about that. I was like, yeah, that's huge impact. And like I said, that's something that you offer for free for business owners to be able to come in and talk to their people to try to save them time, hassle, headache, money,
Exactly.
and like a little bit of driving scared straight for their employees almost to realize how big of an impact that is on them and their personal job, even outside of work.
Right. Right.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, thank you again, Gene. And great to head there. And like I said, you guys go to look up humbrechtlaw.com. And like I said, you'll be able to check her out. And with that, we'll end this episode of Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave. And we will see you all next time. Take care.